This video is for A-level economics and it's giving advice on the AQA Paper 3, and this is going to be based on the 2022 paper. So, to begin with, I'm not going to be looking at the multiple choice. These videos are going to be based on the essay questions. So this video specifically is going to be looking at the 10 marker to what extent, and there's going to be a couple more videos looking at the 15 marker and looking at the 25 marker justify question. Now the 10 marker to what extent is it's a really interesting question because you've not really seen anything like it before. In paper 1 and 2 you don't have the 10 marker. You have a 4 mark data question, but it's not asking you to what extent, so there's no evaluation expectation. So for this 10 marker, it's really crucial in terms of how you use the data, but you're using that data for the whole purpose of concluding, of making that evaluation, making that judgment based on the data that's been presented. So the question, to what extent, so again, that evaluative phrase, to what extent do the data support the view that Boeing has been more successful than Airbus since 2014? Now it's directing you to extract B. So extract B is going to be absolutely crucial. You don't actually need anything else in this case study for this 10 marker other than extract B. So if we have a look at the mark scheme, and the mark schemes for the 10 marker are good because they're very descriptive in terms of what you need to do. So first of all, you need at least 3 relevant, well-developed issues. So if you've got less than 3, then you're not going to get into level 3. All right, so you need to have 3. You have to make use of the numerical or statistical data. If you're not using any of the data at all, you're going to really limit your overall mark and you'll be at the bottom end of level 1. So it's really important that you use it. And obviously to get in level 3, your use of the numerical and statistical data has to be effective. You have to show an appreciation of the limitations of the data. So how you do that, do you want to do it throughout or do you want to do it at the end? It doesn't really matter as long as you appreciate the limitation. If there's no limitations in your answer, then you'll find it really hard to get into level 3. And have you got a final judgment? So if it's asking for 3 relevant, well-developed issues and it's asking for a final judgment, I would be expecting 4 paragraphs. So 3 paragraphs for the 3 issues and 1 paragraph for your evaluation. Right, so let's have a look at figure 1. Now, what the most successful students did on this question was they didn't just consider figure 1, but they also considered this written information above because this is still part of extract B. So we can see that from figure 1, we've got 2014 to 2018 data, but actually in the written part, we've got what happens after 2018 in terms of 2019. And what a lot of students did who maybe struggled to make effective use of the data or they struggled with their limitations being a little bit too vague or not being relevant is they used the limitation of, well, there's no data past 2018. And well, that's not true because there is, because it's in 2019. It might be true of some of the other data, but it wasn't for figure 1. But students did use that limitation for figure 1. So if we have a look at it in terms of 2014 to 2018, there's lots of information that you could look at. You could look at the differences between them. So for example, the difference between 2014 and 2018 and how it falls. You could look at the overall deliveries that have been made by both companies in that time period. You could look at the fact that Boeing has always had the highest number of deliveries from 2014 to 2018. And then what you could also bring in is 2019. So this is just really quickly, I just had a look at a few. So I just looked at Boeing's delivery growth was 11.5%, Airbus's 27.2%. So Airbus has had higher growth. 2019 data, that was an additional 7.9% growth for Airbus, but whilst Boeing, obviously because of the safety concerns, saw a fall of 52.5%. So you could look at it in terms of growth, or you could look at it in terms of current terms with how many are they actually delivering in that year. So obviously 2014, 15, 16, 17 and 18, with the exception of 2019, we see that Boeing does outperform Airbus on actual deliveries, but not growth. So this is my paragraph. Boeing has consistently exhibited higher delivery figures than Airbus between 2014 and 18. Their deliveries amounted to 3,802, which surpasses Airbus's deliveries of 3,470 by 332 units. So such disparity suggests that Boeing may be more efficient in meeting demand than Airbus, or that demand for Boeing aircraft may be greater than that for Airbus. However, it is noteworthy that Airbus has demonstrated growth during this time period, with deliveries rising by 27.2% since 2014 compared to Boeing's 11.5% growth. Moreover, while the difference between their delivery figures in 2018 was minimal, 2019 was marked by a sharp decline in Boeing's deliveries by 52.9%, attributed to safety concerns, and conversely, Airbus's deliveries figures increased by 63 units in the same year, highlighting their continued growth. So now what we've got is figure 2. Now with figure 2, again, lots of key information here, and it depends on how you want to explore it. You can explore it in lots of different ways. You can look at it in terms of who's had the highest market share throughout the time period. So we can see that is Boeing. Boeing's always had higher market share. But then again, we can see the difference in market share and how actually, even though Boeing's been the most dominant, they have seen a fall in their market share, while Airbus has seen an increase. You could look at it in terms of maybe the change, and I've used percentage points to do that because this was another mistake that students made. Students need to make sure that they're aware of the differences between percentage change and percentage points, because if you don't know that difference, then your use of data is going to be inaccurate. So I'll have a look at that in a second. But this is what I picked out. So Airbus, 4.3 percentage point increase, whilst Boeing had a minus 1.6 percentage point decrease. 2018, a difference of 0.3 percentage points. And then obviously, what does that mean for 2019 with everything that's happened with the safety concerns? Probably, I would suggest that it probably means that Airbus has taken over them in market share, but we haven't got the data to prove that. Now, remember, a percentage change measures the relative difference between two numbers expressed as a percentage. So in other words, that calculation of new minus original divided by original times by 100, that's your percentage change. Or a percentage point just represents a unit of measure that describes the difference between two percentages. Now, if you're trying to save time, I would do percentage points, but you just need to make sure that you put percentage points and you don't put a percentage sign. Right, so this was mine. Now, what I've put in red is a limitation. Now, I might not even include this limitation, but I just wanted to put it in there just to kind of show you how you could do it. So evidently, Boeing has maintained a superior position in terms of sales and market penetration compared to Airbus during this period. However, the data also indicates a similar trend observed in Figure 1, wherein Airbus's market share has been progressively increasing. Specifically, in 2014, the difference in market share between them was 6.2 percentage points, whilst in 2018 it decreased to a mere 0.3 percentage points. Additionally, the data reveals that while Boeing's market share has decreased by 1.6 percentage points from 2014 to 18, Airbus's market share has seen a rise of 4.3 percentage points. So I've put, however, it's worth noting that the data does not account for the impact of Boeing's safety concerns as it concludes in 2018. So even though it is sourced from 2021, it is uncertain if Airbus has surpassed Boeing in market share, as this would require further data analysis. So that's a potential limitation that you could have used, but you don't have to. Right, then we got Figure 3. Now, again, when I was marking this, I didn't think Figure 3 was used that effectively by students. I think out of all the figures 1, 2 and 3, this was probably had the least focus. Maybe because it was the final one, maybe students were a bit worried about time, but some students didn't really consider how you could use data. Other students made really, really good use actually calculating what the profit was, and you can do that based on what's been given to you. Some students said for their limitations, oh, we don't know what the profit is, but you can calculate that, so that's not a limitation. That couldn't be used. What you could have said, though, as a limitation, is that we don't know, for example, interest and tax rates, and they might differ between countries, so that might have an impact, and that would be absolutely fair enough. So again, what I've just picked out is I've mostly used the profit margins as a key bit of information, because then I can use that to help me with other aspects of these figures as well. So I'll show you what I mean in a second. So I've put Boeing's profits. If it's, for example, let's look at 2018, it was 13%, so I'll do it as a decimal, 0.13. If I times that by their total revenue of 60.7 billion, then what I have is I have that 7.891 billion as their profit. So I've worked that out. So you could work out the profits. Whilst Airbus's is 5.103 billion, and I put average revenue fell mostly for Airbus, falling by $18.5 million, whilst Boeing fell by $7.7 million. And remember, this is in dollars and it is in billions or millions. So if you're talking about revenue and then you switch into average revenue, make sure that you are saying billions and millions, because that is something else that can trick students. So I've got another limitation in red, and again, I'll explain why I've got them in red in a second, but figure 3 provides evidence supporting the notion that Boeing has been more successful than Airbus in terms of turnover and profit. Specifically, in 2018, Boeing's generated profits amounted to 7.891 billion, surpassing Airbus's profits of 5.103 billion by a difference of 2.788 billion. Notably, for every unit of turnover, Boeing's profit margin stood at 13p, whilst Airbus's profit margin was 9p. Nonetheless, both companies experienced a decline in average revenue during the time period analysed. However, it is noteworthy that the decrease in average revenue from 2014 to 18 was less pronounced for Boeing at minus 9.3% compared to Airbus at minus 20.7%, indicating that Airbus receiving less revenue per aircraft sold than Boeing. So I've put, however, it is important to acknowledge the limitation of this data, as the profits reported are before tax and interest. Thus, it is possible that if Boeing has higher tax rates or more debt than Airbus, then Airbus may have greater profitability after factoring tax and interest. Now, the reason why I've put them both in red is because I'm aware that time management is tricky. And you might think to yourself, if I'm using all this data, I might struggle. I might struggle to include both, and that's fair enough. You won't need both. Just one of the limitations is absolutely fine. As long as you've got a limitation, you'll get into level 3. All right. So if you thought that this was unrealistic in terms of including both limitations, include the one limitation. But the use of data is not unrealistic. I've seen it. I've seen the students who were getting 9 and 10 out of 10 using data in a similar way. Right, now I've got my overall judgment, and I have to think about, okay, how am I going to conclude this? There is no right or wrong answer as long as you justify it. So, current or growth, how damaging has 2019 been to Boeing? The sales trajectory suggests that Airbus has overtaken Boeing. So what I'm going to look at is that I've got my limitations already, what you could have explored if you wanted to. You could have thought about what Boeing does with their profits, R&D spending, quality of the aircraft, because we know that Airbus has obviously provided or developed a new aircraft which is very fuel efficient, and Boeing do the same. So this is my overall judgment. So in judgment to the question, when considering the current time range of 2014 to 18, Boeing is still the most dominant. But the issues of 2019 would suggest that Airbus will and has already overtaken them. So therefore, it depends on if 2021 shows a complete recovery for Boeing, but if confidence has been hurt with less trust, even with the design changes, then you cannot support the view that Boeing is more successful when considering the growth of Airbus. So my overall judgment is no, Boeing is not more successful.